Hey everybody, welcome to Bestie Book Reviews. I'm here with my bestie Mandy.
And I'm here with my bestie Jessica.
So today's video is all about time travel romance.
I'm traveling back to the 80s.
I'm traveling back to yesterday. I don't want to go that far. Okay, so before we get started, make sure to hit that subscribe button. We are still doing our Road to 1K giveaway. Our next level is 500. And when we reach 500, Mandy, what will we be giving away?
Win this cinch sack full of swag along with Twisted Love.
Yes. And you also get an extra entry when you follow us on Instagram. So make sure to follow us over there. All of that info is linked down below.
Yes.
Okay, so we each have
love. Please.
Show us some love. Yeah. So we each have 500. Good Lord.
Holy crap. This is going to be quite the video.
I know. We each have 5 time travel romances to talk about for a total of 10. And if you guys have watched our 1-minute bookrecs lately, you know that finding good time travel romances is really hard for me.
Yes.
Hard.
It is.
We hold everything to a pretty high standard.
So please, if you know of a good time travel romance, put it in the comments for us to check out.
I've been begging for weeks, guys. For weeks. But let's talk about what we have.
All right.
Okay.
Who's going first?
You are.
Okay, I'm going first because I have the ultimate time travel book.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like you're going to want to jump in and say stuff, so I don't even know if I should switch the screen.
You can leave it. You can switch it. It's up to you.
Do you want to hold the book up?
I can.
So Jessica and I's absolute favorite, #1 overall time travel romance is going to be the Surviving Trace series by Calla Reid. It is phenomenal. So epic, yes. So good. Doesn't even begin to describe this series. Mm-hmm. So you have Serene, who is in present day. She's engaged and she runs an antique store. She finds this photo that she's very drawn to, and she can't stop looking at it all the time, to the point it actually causes conflict with her fiance. He gets mad and tosses the photo into the fire, and she loses it. And the next thing she knows, basically, is she is in this huge mansion. Everybody looks very different. People know who she is, but she doesn't know who anybody else is here. And she's kind of like, oh my gosh, what's going on? Turns out she's gone back to 1910, I think, is where it starts.
1909, I think, or 1910. I can't remember. Yeah.
I think it's 1910 because the Titanic is 1910, right?
Yeah, so and it's right before the Titanic.
Yes. And she actually uses that to prove that she's time traveled. But anyway, we have ATN, who is married to Serene, but Serene is not Serene because Serene is now present day Serene. And he doesn't understand why all of a sudden his wife, who he really didn't want to be married to and she didn't want to be married to him, is no longer a royal bitch, basically. He's very confused. And so she has to kind of convince him of who she is. And they're trying to work to help her get back to present day. But the longer this takes, the less she wants to go. There's also kind of a mystery going on that we're trying to solve. And I'll just say book 2. I cried basically from the first to the end. It was heart-wrenching.
It was so good. I just had anxiety.
Wonderful. But so this is the best time travel series. And once you read that, you're going to want to stay at Belgrave Dynasty. So you're going to want to go read her other, there's 3 other books. They don't have the time travel element, but they're in that time.
Belgrave. Yeah.
Yes.
Same.
Oh, so good.
There's nothing to compare. I have read Outlander, and that's great and wonderful and all, but this to me is just so much better. I personally, this is it for me. This is one of my top romances of all time. Love this series.
Yeah.
Love it. Serene and ATN are endgame. That's it.
Outlander, though, is so different.
It is.
Like, I mean, she goes back and she's in the body of somebody that everybody else recognizes. So I think that adds like a whole nother element.
Because then you also have that, like, what happened to Serene from that time? What happened to, where is she? You know, where did she go? Why is our Serene there? Like, there's so many questions. There's just so many things and things that happen that alter the future and the past and the back. It's just so good.
So good. Have to read it.
Yes, it is awesome. So, yeah, highly recommend. All right. My turn?
Yeah. Do you want me to switch over to you?
You can. So my first book that I have is called My Outlaw. It's by Linda Lael Miller. So this is about Kylie. So at the age of 7, she is, she sees a boy in a mirror at her house. This all takes place in Nevada, in Redemption, Nevada. And she sees this boy in this mirrors that are like full, you know, floor to ceiling mirrors. And it's an antique mirror. It's in her grandma's ballroom at her grandmother's home. This estate that belongs to her grandma. And she can tell that the boy looks different. Like, he's not from her time. Like, she can just see it. She can tell that he's, you know, dirty and just a little different. And he's in a saloon. And by writing in like the dirt or on the ground, they figure out a way to communicate after a while, where they can write and she'll have to write it and hold it up backwards. I can't remember exactly how they do it, but she figures out that his name is Darby. And so then as she gets older, so they can't communicate for years, but they can see each other. Like, they can communicate by showing, you know, writing something out, but that's about it. So she knows his name is Darby. When she becomes an adult, she goes and she researches it. My grandma passes away. She goes to this estate. She's cleaning it out, and she remembers all about Darby. And she does some research to find out that Darby is killed in the Wild West on a certain date. And she's at grandma's estate. Something happens and she falls through that glass where she actually sees Darby. And so it's a matter of, can she change things? Can, you know, is that day going to happen where he gets shot? And what's going to bring him to that? And how is this all going to resolve itself? So I like this one. I like the Wild West aspect. I like historicals, but I love Wild West. So, yeah.
All right.
It just was different. It was different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Different is good.
Yep.
Sometimes. Unless it's that like weird Bigfoot story you read.
Or weird gargoyles, or I don't know. Sometimes different's good.
Okay, my next time travel recommendation is one that when I was trying to find something like The Surviving Trace, I stumbled upon the Parallel series by Elizabeth O'Rourke. And then I told Jessica to read it, and we've both read the first 2.
Yeah.
It's incredibly good. The first 2 go together. You definitely apparently have to read the first 2 to read the next 2, but those kind of go together. And for whatever reason, we both took a break and just never went back. I have it on my TBR, like on my Kindle. I want to read them. I just haven't done it. I don't know why.
Yeah.
Maybe as soon as this video is over, I'll go start those. I don't know. So the first 2 books are about Nick and Quinn. Quinn has been having these dreams since she was about 4. About Nick, and she kind of freaks her family out because she would like start waking up screaming and like hysterically crying about her husband, and she's like a little tiny kid, and they don't really know what to do with her basically. And she's engaged. She's looking at wedding venues. She gets this horrible headache and passes out, and she wakes up in a hospital, and the doctor that walks in is Nick. And this starts from there. Like, there's a big, huge mystery kind of like, how do they know each other? Because Nick feels kind of drawn to her as well. But Quinn is much more like in, I don't know, like in the know, but not really, if that makes sense. Am I describing that well? I don't know.
Yeah.
So this is the story of them, because you have Quinn, who is engaged. Nick is also in a relationship, and he's now her doctor. So there's all sorts of lines that are going to get crossed and blurred and all of that. But it was incredibly good. And I will say that I did not really know what, like, how it was going to work out or what was going on until like,
no,
till we know, basically.
Yeah,
So,
I had
very good.
pretty severe anxiety with this one. And I think that's because of my history, which I'm not going to say what that was because that has a lot to do with what's happening in the book. But I've gone through something similar with a child. And so that was very hard reading that. And then I kept going, I know how this is supposed to end. How is the author going to make this work? Like, how are we going to get around this? How does that just happen? So, yeah, I had some pretty like good anxiety. I'm not an anxious person, but when I'm reading, apparently I get very anxious. I don't cry, but I get anxiety over a book. So yeah, it was good. I do need to read the rest. I just had to take a little bit of a break because that was a little bit much for me at the time.
Yeah, it would be. I have so many book series that I'm like, oh, I need to go back to that, or an author that I'm like, I want to go read that.
I mean, I downloaded. How many books did I say I downloaded to go camping?
Like 50.
54.
You're batshit crazy. That's the problem.
I mean, I read 11, but 54. Because I didn't know what I wanted to read while I was gone because I just have that many books. And that's just the tip of the iceberg.
Yep.
It's just sad. So
Okay. Next time travel.
The next time travel book, I've actually talked about this several times on our channel. So this is Irek by Joanna Bell. So this is about Paige and Irek. Paige has, when she's 5 years old, she loses her mom. She's 4 or 5, and she's after mom's been laid to rest and all that good stuff. She's outside playing in her backyard, and she gets close to this tree, and she touches the roots of this tree, and she falls through time, and she goes back to like the 700s, Europe. She's in England, roughly what would be England, and it's before the Vikings, around the time that the Vikings started to invade around there. I don't know how historically accurate it is. Don't quote me on that, but she meets these two kids, a little boy and a little girl, their brother and sister. And throughout her life, they live in a little village right there. And so throughout her life, she travels back and forth, and she goes and she plays with these little kids. And she even gets to a point like where she has to go see a psychologist because she tells her dad, and they're like, your daughter's gone crazy, and there's some things going on. She eventually learns not to talk about it. She's an only child, so she doesn't have siblings to play with. And dad is so deep in his grief that he just can't. He just can't function. And so she becomes the adult, but she goes back and forth to play with these kids from this village. She can tell they're different. She doesn't understand, but she can tell they're different, right? Because they dress differently, they talk differently, they're dirty, that kind of a thing. When she is in college, she comes home, she's visiting, she decides that she's going to go back one more time and check on these guys. At this point, she's figured it out, but she's going to go back one more time to check on them. And then call, and then that's going to be it. Then she's going to grow up. And so she goes to do that. And when she gets there, the village is being, sacked by the Vikings. The Vikings have come. And that's where we meet Irek. He is the Jarl. He is in charge of this group of Vikings. And they see her and they take her. And then she's offered up to him. And he's like, wow, she has meat on her bones and all of her teeth. And that's just not something we see women her age now. And so she spends the winter with them and tries to figure out how to get back home. So this is actually really good. I really, really like this. I don't think that Joanna Bell has written a lot of books, and there are some things in here. Of course, there's some little errors that it never bothered me. And there are some things like there's some scenes where we get flashbacks from when she's younger, playing with these kids that I don't necessarily think are 100% necessary. But it added to the story. I read it the first time, that when I reread it, I kind of skim through those and go, okay, let's get on to the good stuff. Where's Irek? He's the hottie. So this is a series. It is a 4-book series, and each book is very good. But everybody time travels. Back to Vikings, guys. Vikings.
All right. Mm-hmm. Okay, my next book is one that we've both read because I read this and I told you to read it and you loved it as well. Mm-hmm. It is The Soul Always Remembers by Georgia Cates. This is a slightly different twist to the time travel. We have Caroline, who has been having visions of the past since she was a very little girl. Her mom is just an awful person and decides that she has something wrong with her. She must be schizophrenic. She must be this. She must be that, and is wanting to medicate her and basically just treats her really poorly. Her grandma believes her and listens to her and kind of gives her some peace a little bit with all the stuff that she sees. So basically, we end up with two fantastic stories. We have Caroline, who's visiting the past and seeing August and Frank, or Gussie, as Frank calls her. And something really tragic happens there, and she's trying to somehow right this wrong by seeing these past. But we also are waiting for Caroline to find her soulmate in present day. So it's so good, so good.
Yes.
Just a little different though, because the time travel is a little bit different because she's having visions of the past and not necessarily traveling to the past.
But this was another one where I was like, how's the author going to fix this?
Yes. And both stories, the story of Frank and Gussie and Caroline's story, I don't want to give like there's so much, I can't even say who the other person's going to be for Caroline, her soulmate, or how that's going to work out. But both stories are absolutely fantastic. And I was just like, there was no parts where I was bored.
No, this is another one like how we talked about, like one of those books that you just get so involved in the characters and their lives and story. Like this is one of those that's just epic. It will consume you. Yes. And it's all you're going to think about when you're reading it, and you're just going to get sucked right in. And I think I said this a couple weeks ago when we were talking about this book, that this is one that my friend that I work with has never read this book. But the minute I mention it, she knows what it is, because I was so like consumed by it, having to stop and breathe at the office and stuff. She knows what I'm talking about when I mention it. So I
read, this is how good it is. So you and I both read a ton of books. And so it's very easy if you read one book, like we said with the Parallel series. We absolutely loved it, but we read the first two books and we just need to go back and read the next two books. So it's very easy to do that. There's some trilogies where the third book hadn't come out yet, and I still haven't gone back to read the third book, even though I enjoyed the first two.
Yeah.
This book I read not realizing the second book hadn't come back out yet. And so that is something to always pay attention to, reading tip. And I had to wait, I think it was like almost a month for book 2 to come out. And it was one where I actually wrote on my calendar to go grab it. And I did, and I read it. And because I had to know what was going to happen, like it was not a book that you could just forget and be like, oh, maybe someday I'll go back and finish it. No, like I had to do it now. Like as soon as it was available.
Yeah, I remember when you were telling me all about that, and then you got me on that train and
restful.
Yep. So.
Okay.
Okay.
Where are we traveling to next?
The Highlands.
Sweet.
Why not?
Why aren't you dressed for it? You're a Highland dancer. You should have been dressed up. I'm disappointed.
I don't have my kilt out. I don't. Oops. My husband has one. And my girls have their dance kilts. I have a whole bunch of swatches for my dance kilt. My husband's is not a dance kilt, though. It's just a kilt for the games. But yeah. No. I have everything else. They're very expensive, and they're handmade in Scotland.
So go put your husband's kilt on and let's do this.
You see me from here up.
You can stand.
Oh my gosh. No, it's okay.
The viewers are very disappointed.
I'm sure the viewers are very disappointed. Guys, I'm sorry. We're not getting Jessica in her kilt right now. Okay. All right. Next book.
Yes, get a move on. We're going to be here till midnight.
So the next one is The Highlander's Captive. It's by Mariah Stone. This is called by the Highlander series. I've read the first couple of books in this one. I haven't completed the series. She also has a Viking one that I haven't got into yet. I want to, but I haven't. So this is about Amy. She's a McDougal. That's her last name, Amy McDougal. She's from present time, and she is on a field trip to a castle in Scotland. And when she's there, they go down into the dungeons of this castle. Okay, so she touches a rock. There's a rock down there. It's got some paintings or carvings or something on it. And she touches it, and she gets transported back in time to 1307. Time before deodorant and bathrooms, guys. But when she gets there, she's captured by this guy, Craig. is his name, Craig Campbell, and he finds out that she's a McDougal. Well, they're rival clans, and so he's originally throws her into prison, into like their cells, into their holding cells at their castle, and then something happens, and they're forced to get married, and then we go from there. So she's forced to marry herself a Highlander. I really don't think it'd be that hard. I don't think they'd have to put a lot of pressure on me. Just saying. It could be my Scottish blood, but still, I don't know. Okay.
All right. So my next one is one that you and I both read. You absolutely love this one. It's the only book that's ever made you cry.
One of them.
What? I thought there was only one book that's ever made you cry.
No, Unseen Messages.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
And Karen made me cry with her winter one.
Wow.
I know. That's
all right.
it, though. Okay, let's talk about
three books that have made Jessica cry.
3 books that have made me cry.
Okay, so my next book is Transcendence by C. Savage. This is Beth and Ed. And Beth is from present day, and she ends up back in caveman days. We actually don't ever really find out specifically when it is, but it is like caveman days. Ed is not able to communicate with language with her. He only can make a few name sounds, as he puts it. So we get everything through Ed's perspective, which I found quite fascinating. I really actually liked that because he can't communicate with Beth. So we really like being from present day, we can kind of maybe make some assumptions to what's going on. But when I read the follow-up book, which is just a novella, Loves, which is her version, there were things where she referenced, and I'm like, oh, so that's what was happening then. There were times where I didn't quite understand what was happening because you're just as confused as Ed is. But he is just so fantastic. Like she's from modern time, of course. So she does like all sorts of crazy things. And Ed doesn't have language. So he's not a talker. And Beth talks to him constantly. And he like he thinks in his head, like we're hearing his perspective. He'll be like, oh my gosh, she like doesn't shut up, but that's my mate. I love her. Like he thinks that she's his mate because he's all alone. He's all alone, which is so sad. Like his tribe is gone. And so it's just him. So when Beth shows up, like this is like his sole focus now. He has a mate and he is going to take care of her. And he's super happy. But it's so funny because like he like really is concerned about her a lot and the things she does, but he'll always be like, my mate is so weird, but I love her. That's my mate. Like, I just love that about him. So it's really quite interesting because like, if you just think about that for like a half a second, like what it would be like to all of a sudden find you back in caveman times with a caveman that literally finds you in a pit and drags you back to his cave. It's kind of crazy.
Not only that, he's desperate to put babies in you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Is that why I read that book? Is that from your breeding kink? Why did I read that?
You were just, it was one of those days when you called me and you're like, I don't know what to read. And I'm like,
no, I picked to read it. It was in convincing my bestie for something.
So maybe it was my breeding trope. I don't remember.
I can't remember. I swear
I did do a wild man one too, and it could have been in that.
Oh, that's what it was. I think it was wild man.
Yeah, I don't think it was breeding. No, because breeding was sugar daddies.
Yeah, it was wild man. It was
my wild man one.
Yeah, but Ed is just definitely been in the breeding kink.
It could have been the breeding kink too, because he's like, now is she gonna let me put babies in her?
Yeah,
and she's over here like, no, bud, no. So no birth control in caveman days.
No.
All right, my next book is it's called The Room to the West, and it's by Lauren Beale. Now, we've heard a lot about Lauren Beale lately. She wrote Captive, and she wrote Hitched, and she wrote the follow-up to that, which was another book that I read this month that was really great. But this one is a time travel Western romance. It is
right up your alley.
I know, right up my alley. It's definitely dark. I would definitely check triggers going into this, guys. It is Lauren Beale. I mean, that should be enough. Enough said. It was only her second book, but it was great. So this is about our heroine, Hannah. She is an escort and present time. And so we see her with clients. We see her talking about how her soul is getting sucked away with each client she sees. And she is in a rather sad situation. She's losing a piece of herself every time she sees a client. And these clients are not always kind, and they do things to her that nobody would allow to just happen, but she does. She allows these things to happen. Shouldn't say nobody, but I personally wouldn't let them do those things. So, you know. And so she ends up getting a email from a prospective client telling her to go to this room at this hotel off the road here, and off the interstate or wherever it is. And she shows up there and she walks into that room, and it's very dark. And when the door shuts behind her, she goes to leave it. And when she opens it up, she's in a saloon in the 1800s, and there's no getting back. And she realizes that she's in this saloon with these other saloon girls who are working there. And at first she decides that she is not going to work this saloon. She's going to be a waitress here, and she's not going to work for this madam who's going to take all her money. And she didn't want to be a prostitute in the Wild West. And that's not what she wants. And so eventually she meets Wes, I think his name. Yep, Wes was our hero, and he is a farmer, but he has his own story, and he has his own, his own things that are happening. And she meets him playing cards there. And so this is their story and what happens with that. But I really liked this one a lot.
I have a few time travel books I need to go read now.
You know, this one's shorter too because it's Lauren Beale. It's not very long.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Okay, my last one, last but definitely not least on this list, is A Stitch in Time by Kelly Armstrong, which you have also read. Have you read all of them? There's like a bunch. She has like a lot of novellas in between.
I read one or two of the novellas. I haven't read all the novellas, but there's a new one coming out later this year.
Oh, sweet.
I've read a couple to send that to you because it's the sister to the girl from the third book, and I took a screenshot to send it to you a couple of days ago, and I forgot.
Oh, yeah. I read several of the books and a couple of the novellas, but I know there's also still some books I haven't read in the series. I'm going to talk about the first one, though. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, this is A Stitch in Time by Kelly Armstrong. This is book 1, and this takes place at Thorn Manor. And we have Browen, who has spent her summers at her aunt's house, which is Thorn Manor. And here she visits William, who is a boy that is the same age as her, but back in his time. And this like continues on for years where she goes for the summer and sees him. And then some things happen and she doesn't go back, and she stays in the States. And her aunt ends up dying and she inherits Thorn Manor. So she goes back, like, I think it's almost like 20 years later from the last time that she saw him. And to this point, she's not even 100% sure if like he's real, or if she just was like, wow, I had a really crazy imagination as a child. And so she returns, and there's kind of like a mystery that's going on here as well, which I don't want to get into because I guess that was spoilers, but just know that you're also getting a romantic suspense mystery with this as well. And she ends up stumbling upon William again. And guess what? William is not happy to see her because she promised to always come back and visit him. And he has basically shuttered himself into Thorn Manor in his time and doesn't really see people. There's rumors that he's like not a great person. The town folk talk about him and things like that. And he could care less. He's just like shut himself off from everybody because he's really bitter, I guess would be the best way to explain it. That Browen just kind of upped and left him, and he didn't understand why or what was going on. And so this is them kind of reconnecting, but you have her in present time and him in his time. So how does all this work out?
And there's that underlying mystery. There's also a little bit of paranormal stuff too. I don't know so much in the first book as it is in the consecutive books, but there is some paranormal stuff happening too.
Yes.
A little bit of ghosty stuff. So yeah,
there's no like aliens.
no, it's
like
more ghosty stuff.
Likes to read about.
It's really good because I'm not even. I don't normally go for that, but this worked. This worked great for me.
You will not find blue appendages in this storyline.
No, I knew it was missing something.
It's not missing anything. It's a fantastic.
It is. No, it's great. It's great. No blue
fantastic time travel.
Yes. So speaking of, my last book is the second book in that series because that one is my favorite out of these books. So this one is the story of Rosalind. Now, Rosalind is married to, is it William from the first book, Mandy?
Yes.
Yeah. She's married to William's best friend. And at one point in time, when William and Bronwyn are doing their thing, she accidentally falls into the chest that takes them back and forth between present time and the past.
This one actually made me really sad.
I know this one was really sad in certain ways. It really was, but I think that's why I liked it because it actually made me somewhat emotional. Go figure. Anyhow, at one point in time, she falls. So she doesn't understand what's happening because she's not privy to this information. She is a mom of a little baby at home, and she's happily married to her husband. He thinks she just went for a ride or a walk or something that night. I can't remember. I think she was out for a ride. And so she falls into the 21st century. And she spends 4 years there before she figures out how to get back. Now she's finally figured out how to get back to the past, to her husband and her son, who's a toddler at this point. But the thing is will her husband accept her? I mean, she's been gone. What does he think? Does he think she's dead? Does he think she up and ran off with the livery boy? Like, what does he think? And so because she doesn't know how he'll react to that, she disguises herself as an older lady, and she goes to the house to check on the child. She wants to see her child, and she wants to see what the status is of that whole thing. And when she gets there, she gets it mistaken for the new governess. And so she becomes the governess to her son while in disguise. And so this is how that all plays out between them. We see some of this in the first book, and then we see this play out in the second book. So this was actually my favorite out of the two. Out of the three that I've read in that series, this one was my favorite. And I think it just because it tugged at those mommy heartstrings of mine. So
definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So. All right, guys. So those are the time travel romances that we have for you guys. Definitely let us know if you have a favorite time travel romance that we did not recommend here, because we would love to pick up some more. I think I've said that a lot lately.
I've read some duds trying to find
I've read a lot of duds, as you guys have seen if you've watched our 1 minute bookrecs recently. A lot of duds. So anyhow, let us know if you have a favorite, but thank you so much for watching.
Make sure to check back on Mondays, Thursdays, and Saturdays for new videos from us.
Until then, we'll see you in the next video.